We get caught up on what we've been working on the Willmar Sub, as well as figure out that annoying sound that we hear occasionally with some of our locomotives.
Hey, want to hear the most annoying sound in the world? Guys!
That doesn't sound right, but we'll get to the bottom of it, as well as operate a little bit out on the GN in 1970. And we cover all this on this episode of the GN in 1970.
70s.
All right, welcome to the GN in 1970. Obviously, we're here at the railroad. I'm not out here a whole lot. I'd like to probably get out here a little bit more often, but usually in the winter months is a good time to be able to come out here and work on the railroad itself. Now, when I say work on, we're not actually working on the scenery so much. My dad does a lot of the scenery. In fact, any of the scenery, ground foam that you see on the entire railroad has been done by him. So there's a lot of stuff that he's done that you can visually see, and then there's stuff that he's done that you don't see. And that's a lot of times coupler upgrades. Sometimes it's putting KD upshifts on them or downshift couplers. They do have the ability to raise or lower your coupler height to make sure that they're right on. We use a coupler gauge, but this entire railroad is all KD equipped. All locomotives, all rolling stock. We take off all plastic. Anything that has plastic on it has flex to it, and we've just found that they're not as reliable. So we've gone that route. And this is just over the years. We don't just turn the entire fleet over in a heartbeat, but the maintenance to the rolling stock is a big part of it. And then track maintenance. We find that track cleaning, one of the things I mentioned in the past, we've got a track cleaning train right here. And that just gives us the ability to, obviously clean the track, but we run up and back on a semi-annual basis, not all the time. But you want to keep your track clean. We've changed our decoders. We've upgraded a lot of locomotives to TCS wow sound, as well as ESU. So the wow sound have been fantastic. We've really liked them. The ESU, obviously, they've kind of got a name for themselves and work really well. We also have some Tsunami mixed into the railroad, but the ESU and TCS have been the ones that we've gone to the most.
The best, General.
TCS we find really good to use in an individual switcher that is, isolated or maybe in a situation that it might have dead or dirty track. I'm not saying this is the answer, but we use the Keep Alive boards. They have a kit that has a motherboard that has the capacitors on it. It works really well. We've been pleased with it, so we've worked it into our SW1500s. We put it into a few of the other locomotives that we like. They also have a switching feature, which you can use F6 and F7 as your brake and your brake release to be able to switch with ease. I like the prototypical operations and the speed of it. Some operators, if they like slot car operating, where it's just boom, 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 they're zipping in and out of a yard, doing the work as fast as they can. I'm starting to slow down. I like the operations a little bit slower.
It's more relaxed. You're not as big of a time crunch. You don't feel rushed.
I'm not saying that you shouldn't try to do your job efficiently or as fast as you can, but some of those elements have creeped into the actual operations. And with that, if you've got these scale models, you like to see them move at a little bit more of a scale speed, and you don't necessarily have to be hustling as fast. Our operating system that we work with is actually just a series of events. We have a number of different trains that are queued and ready, and we usually will look at a 2.5 or a 3-hour session to be able to work through whatever we can in that time. Once we hit the bottom of that time slot, we just cut it off, and the actual list of cars or trains that are ready to run will be picked up at the next session. And then once all of them have been ran, you can reset the system and start back at the top again. So that's how we handle operations. The railroad in its entirety has had its issues. It's had bugs, it's had glitches, it's had shorts, it's had a lot of different issues that surface, and we try to address them accordingly. Now I have a list over on the side there that looks like it's a mile long, but that list itself is what we use as a checklist to be able to knock stuff off when we're not operating and we're working on the railroad. So we'll add a little bit more detail here and look at some of those decoders that we've installed as well as our operating system.
All right, what do you know about the Great Northern? How many of the NW5s were painted into big sky blue? Was it A, 2, B, 0, C, 1, or D, 3? We'll find out in a moment. Have you ever done an install and ran into issues after? What's that clunking sound you say? Yeah, it turns out it's the gears, and anybody that knows the Proto 2000 line, they run into issues all the time. They're cracked gears, you end up popping this thing open and getting them replaced. Look at the size of that crack.
That's a huge crack!
So we end up digging into this here, and we're going to get the gear actually put on. We use the NMRA standards gauge, check the wheel width to make sure everything is all up and good. And we do a test drive to hear this. Oh, that's not good. I had to take it all back apart again, find out what the problem was, and it turns out it's the worm gear. This isn't the first time I've had this happen. You got to pop the worm gear out, and you got to get it lubed up. Well, what kind of lube do you use? Well, not KY jelly, but you end up finding this stuff here. It's going to be this premium. I use this for slot cars, but it works just as well to be able to get rid of that screeching sound. Thank you, Woodland Scenics, for the hobby lube. Here we go. We're going to end up just putting a little bit on. You don't need a ton. Oh, magic. Now the squeak is going to be gone. And it is. Not bad. I'll take it. We'll put the shell back on, and we'll also show you one thing we do with the speed matching. I use a speed table in JMRI. End up using the AccuTrack. This is 40 mile an hour scale speed, and I match that up to the throttle. So the throttle's set to 40, that's 40 miles an hour. Now that we got all that done, we might as well fire up the sound and give a listen and let this thing roll out before we dive into looking at some operations. Alright, baby birds, did you jump out of your nest and shout out an answer because you knew it? Well, if you guessed C, you'd be correct. It was the only NW5 to be painted into big sky blue, number 188. It was in the blue livery, which was retired in 1982 along with all the other NW5s. Alright, bringing a purpose to the railroad, that is operations. We've got Panel Pro by JMRI, and operations is what we use. It is a slick system, very simple. Even a 4-year-old can run it. When it really comes down to the basics, I'm just going to show you real quick, because this is the settings. You can set up all the information as you can see here. The operations for locations. But if you're starting out, keep it simple. I think when I started, I did Union Yard, I had Lyndale Yard, I had Litchfield, and I had Willmar Yard. I had 4 locations. I think I did 1 track each, and then I end up going into the operations, and you go to cars. The drop-down menu here is the same as the drop-down menu right here. You pull up cars. This is all the cars on the railroad, 434 cars. Wow, that's a lot. But when it really comes down to how much information do you need for each of the cars, you can enter it into an Excel spreadsheet, import it, and all of it's done for you. But this is a lot of information that can be had here to be able to manipulate and really bring together some fun operations. So if you're really looking for something to be able to have fun with your railroad, this is a good route to go. You can see the locomotives are all logged in here, 65 locomotives that are active. Not every single one of them is up and running. I know, like in this case, this one is out of service. It's currently being worked on. I'm putting a decoder into it. But you're really looking at something that can bring this to a whole new level. As far as railroading is concerned, it's fun to run it in circles, but it's even more fun to run it back and forth and have a purpose as far as dropping cars off and picking cars up. I will show you a little bit more about this here. We'll take a run on the GN in 1970. We'll look at one of these trains. The one that we're going to run here is actually the 360 local, I think. If it's not the 360 local, it's the 360 sprint. Either way, let's get this thing up and running. All right, we find ourselves starting in Union Yard. This is actually where the yard crew would have built and created the local. Once we got our cars, we check them all off, and we get ready to head out. We cut through Lyndale, we cut through Wayzata, work our way through Delano, and then all the way up to Helix, entering into Willmar Yard. We've got all the cars we need. We mark it off on our switch list, and we work our way east. Head back down the Helix.
You spin me right round, baby, right round, like a record, baby, right round, round, round.
And do a little bit of work in Delano. See our little engineer here, 4 years old, still plugging away, so the system can't be that complicated. Here we are working in Lyndale now, and we'll get this thing switched out. Once we have all the cars that we need, we'll go through the switch list, check off the cars, and head into Union Yard, where we'll tie off and end the night.
70s.
We really enjoyed creating these episodes of the GN in 1970 as well as Sue the Milwaukee Road. The only way we know if you guys like these is hit that like button. You can hit it, click it, smash it, whatever it is that you're into. You can hit the subscribe button if you want to see on future episodes. Just make sure you ring that bell. And if you want to see more of the Great Northern, you can take a tour of the GN in 1970, which covers the HO scale Willmar subdivision. You can also check out other episodes that I've done of Sue the Milwaukee Road that covers the 1985 merger of the Soo Line and Milwaukee Road in HO scale. Thanks a lot for watching.